We are here in the aftermath of the Kansas City Chiefs versus the Los Angeles Chargers in Brazil. And boy, howdy, was it disappointing. Look, we're going to, if anyone is new here, and there's a lot of new faces this offseason, I'm going to keep things mainly positive. That's kind of how I do things on this channel. I know that it is cathartic sometimes to absolutely destroy the Kansas City Chiefs after they destroy themselves on the field, but I do not think that that is necessary in this case. This was a loss to a very good football team. There is a reason that people are picking the Los Angeles Chargers to win the division. I still do not think that they will. I think that the Chiefs showed a whole lot of problems this game, but I do think that they are problems which are able to be remedied. I do think that yes, Godplar, the defense should be ashamed. Um, we're going to get there. I promise we're going to get there, but I do want to start with some positive things. The offense did show signs of life. You want to score more than the points that they scored, but there were big plays. There was a return to big plays for the Kansas City Chiefs. That is a positive sign. Patrick Mahomes was able to stand in the pocket and deliver the ball, and that is a good sign. This is a Chargers defense that was very, very good last season. This is a Chargers defense that I believe will be good this season. There are a lot of positives to take from this game despite the loss. One thing to keep in mind, though, this may be a very long early season for the Kansas City Chiefs, as they have a boatload of very difficult games, and they are down three of their top four wide receivers right now. I said I was going to start with the positives, but I do want to throw this out there. And look, this might be completely talking out of school, but I think I know what I'm talking about here. On those mesh routes, the mesh route where the Chiefs lost Xavier Worthy, normally what is happening there is one player is supposed to pick a defensive player. It's designed to be that way. One of those characters, either Travis Kelce or Xavier Worthy, was designated to keep an eye on the field, while the other was designated to keep an eye on the quarterback. If you go back and you look at that play, I'm pretty sure it was Travis Kelce who was supposed to be watching the defense, watching for his fellow Kansas City Chief, and that did not happen. He ran directly into Xavier Worthy. Xavier Worthy, weighing about as much as Travis Kelce's leg, ended up being injured on the play. I think that is Travis Kelce's fault. Don't know 100%. Don't think that I think that's Travis Kelce's fault. Xavier Worthy, for what it's worth, I would imagine is going to be out a number of weeks because of how fast he was ruled out. I would imagine that is a 3 to 6 week injury, meaning the Kansas City Chiefs are going to be down 3 or 4 wide receivers early in the season this year, right off the bat. So positives for this game. Again, the signs of life for the offense, the big plays from the offense, the explosiveness from the offense, that is back. The offensive line is going to allow some of that moving forward. As Godplar says, yes, the protection did look good. Josh Simmons was everything that he was billed to be. It might be a very long decade for the NFL if Josh Simmons is exactly who he looked to be tonight. Marion says 0-5 to start the season. I don't think that is the case. I know that this is right where we will immediately go, right? That we're Chiefs fans. That is going to be the first thing on our mind. But as a Chiefs fan, I do have to say that game was much closer than it would have been last season. That game was much closer than I think many of us had the gut feeling that it would have been, right? There were several times where big plays did happen. I didn't foresee those things happening. Julia says right back where we left off. I don't think that's the case. There's maybe if you were looking at problems, like the number of problems for a team, 6 problems, 7 problems, 8 problems that a team has to fix, we're probably right back at the same number, but I think they're a little bit different problems. The problem this year for the Chiefs is not that they have too many possession wide receivers when they need some speed. The problem this year for the Chiefs is not the left tackle position. The problem this year for the defense is not getting after the quarterback. It looked to me like the problem for the defense this year is going to be timidness timidity from the defensive backs. The defensive backs weren't out there just kind of waiting on plays to come from them. Marion corrects himself, 0-1 to start the season. But we went right there. Didn't we? We went right there. That is a Freudian slip, not just a typo, I think. So, Godplar says, and what is up with the soft coverage on third and forever? I just don't get Spag's game plan there. I don't know that it's so. Yes, there are a lot of soft coverage where it shouldn't have been, but the bigger problem to me was that the Kansas City Chiefs defensive backs, after they watched a player make the reception, waited for the receiver to come to them. That, I think, is a bigger problem even than the soft coverage. The soft coverage the soft coverage is something that happens early in the play. So you can make up for that later in the play. Once the quarterback is set his feet, you make a break on the ball, etc. So I don't know exactly what is going on there either, but it does not look to be particularly promising. But we've seen this from the Chiefs defense in the past. The Chiefs defense in the past has started the season in that sort of shape and ended up being better as time went on. The defense is going to get better, I think, as time goes on, barring injury, right? Did Omar Norman Lott even dress for this game? I did not notice him on the field at all. I noticed Jerry Tillery getting a whole lot of Jerry Tillery. Do I keep calling him Jared? Jerry Tillery getting a whole lot of snaps. And he does look to be dealing with those snaps very well. I do think that Jerry Tillery is going to be a good piece of this defense moving forward. Marion says, would like to keep the positive about the season, but still dealing with the trauma from last year. Here's the thing. That is a champagne problem there, Marion. Dealing with the trauma of a Super Bowl loss, right? That's where we are as a franchise. That's where we are as a fan base. But we do still have the entirety of the 80s, 90s, early 2000s with which to contend as Chiefs fans because of how damaging those are going to be to our deep psyche. Mafio says the defense didn't look good. The defense did not look good. It didn't look great. So I think that part of it, that's just what a good defense looks like in today's NFL. I just think that that's what's going on there. So not a whole lot of big mistakes from the defense. That's promising moving forward. But the small things were a problem. The getting to the quarterback was a problem. Getting after the quarterback, not necessarily a problem. The Chiefs were able to get movement on the quarterback, were able to debase Justin Herbert several times, but not able to drive it home necessarily so much. Godplar says, and I hate to say this, but CJ looked old. CJ did not look young. I will admit that much. Chris Jones did not have a great game. Chris Jones. So maybe the story of the night was the bad plays from the veteran players. Again, I contend that the Xavier Worthy injury was a Travis Kelce mishap. Obviously not on purpose, right? I'm not saying that, and things happen on a football field, but I do think that was on Travis Kelce. The big run for Justin Herbert to seal the game was absolutely on Chris Jones. So now he was trying to take the opportunity to make the play. He thought he could sneak under the tackle there. Is it the biggest sin in the world? Absolutely not. But it is not a good thing. Axel says Taylor is awful still. Yeah, no, he needs to be replaced, I think, at this point. You have four penalties in the first game? So here's the thing with Andy, though. I don't think Andy's going to replace him because these are problems between whistles. If you have a problem, so we saw Kingsley Suamataia replaced last year for problems between the snap and the whistle. That is the sort of thing that Andy Reid is going to pull you for. I don't know that Jawan Taylor gets replaced for four penalties. Four of them. That is something that's grating. That is absolutely grating for a team. You saw Travis Kelce get into it with him, and probably deservedly so. I mean, that's the Mahomesian discipline seems to happen non-kinetically, right? But when a Kelce blows up at you, it seems you're going to get headbutted. strangely, it was Travis Kelce drawing a penalty for a strike to the face that made a difference in this game. But Tyre Tart being able to stay in the game, I don't understand that. I always thought if you made contact with a player's head and face, it is an ejection. And then Tyre Tart absolutely ended up making a difference in this game after that point. Fired him up, and he was very, very useful to that Chargers defense after that point. Robert says left side of the line held their own against a very good pass rush. That does need to be examined further. Yeah, the left side of the line. Kingsley had a mishap. It was a big mishap. It was on the play where Khalil Mack got through. I don't remember if that was a sack or if that was the big completion. If that was the big completion and Khalil Mack does not get through, all of a sudden you probably have a touchdown on that play versus what ended up happening, taking the field goal with Harrison Butker. But one mishap in a game is something that you will absolutely take from a left guard, right? I don't think that Kingsley had a bad game. I think that he held up much better in the pass than we were expecting. Still, not a whole lot of ability to run for the Kansas City Chiefs offense, and I do think that will look better as the season goes on. Godplar says Ashton looked good on the defensive plays he was in. I think Ashton Gelati might be the second best defensive end on the roster. He's the most active defensive end on the roster. I don't know why Chris Jones spent so much time at defensive end in this game. And again, I don't have snap counts. I haven't gone back and rewatched it. Obviously, this is going up immediately at the conclusion of the game. But Ashton Gelati, I thought, showed a whole lot more burst than Chris Jones out there at the edge position. And look, I'm kind of over all of the weird game stuff with the Kansas City Chiefs. The Friday night games, the international games, it does not allow the team to get in a rhythm. You saw that also in the Super Bowl. They suffered from that. So the pin drop says the defense played soft. Yeah. Robert adds to that the secondary couldn't cover a 90-year-old woman. Here's the thing, man. I might have to buy myself one of these number 27 Chamari Connor jerseys and sneak onto the field because I think I can at least be more aggressive than was Chamari Connor. Whether or not I can be as fast as Brian Cook. I'll tell you that much. I'll tell you that much off the top and right now. Ronald says D was okay, but it had to be very good with a flat O in the first half and a few key missed deep passes. Yeah. If the Kansas City Chiefs can figure out the first quarter, the Chiefs will be a much improved team on the season. The Chiefs' first quarter struggles continue here. I don't know if this, I mean, I think what it is that Andy Reid wants to get too cute because he has the best weapon in the NFL in Patrick Mahomes. It appears to me, though, that Patrick Mahomes does best when he has some type of rhythm into which he can groove, right? And you don't get that early in the game when you're refusing to run on first down. You don't get that early in the game when there are injuries for your offense to what was probably going to be the key driver of this offense in this game in Xavier Worthy. A lot of things, I think, in this game just went a little bit too wrong for the Kansas City Chiefs. I think that's what this was. I think that this was a culmination of the game coming together and passing out of their hands. That is what I have in my notes, is that it was just things going a little bit too wrong. You did have, for what it's worth, you did have Tyquan Thornton with the one. I've been talking about this for weeks now. Tyquan Thornton needs one per game, just one. And things will open up for this offense. And you saw that in this game. Things were opening up for the offense. If the Kansas City Chiefs did have Rashee Rice, and I know they don't, if the Kansas City Chiefs did have Xavier Worthy, and no, they did not, the score, I think, would have been drastically better than it was for the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, whether or not the defense would give up those, so whether or not the defense would have continued to give up the sort of 15-yard completions to Lad McConkey, and inexplicably Quentin Johnston is up for debate. If Quentin Johnston is this season who he was in this game, the Chargers are going to be much improved. Quentin Johnston has all of the tools. And if Harbaugh is intelligent, and he is, and I hope that maybe he just has a problem with lapses of judgment, Quentin Johnston will be used more the way that he was used in this game. Create space for him as opposed to throwing him 50-50 balls. And sometimes I think that will develop confidence in a receiver. We were speaking of confidence in a receiver, I think we were dangerously close to Hollywood Brown assuming the mantle of Sky Moore in this game. Early on, he just looked like he couldn't get anything right. And maybe that is him being thrown to the wolves in the Xavier Worthy role when he was not expecting to be in the Xavier Worthy role. Maybe you have to imagine that a guy who's been in the NFL as long as Hollywood Brown has been would be able to compensate for that, but it did not appear that he was able to do so. Evans said, or Denny says, poor defense. And Mafio says the run game is non-existent for the Chiefs. I think those things, ironically, as these were back-to-back comments, are more hand in hand than you would like to admit, because the Kansas City Chiefs early in that game were so many consecutive 3-and-outs that it kept the defense on the field. All of a sudden, everybody's gassed, and you can't really get any footing, right? So that is, I think, part of the deal there. The KCDC says D-line needs an investment. I think Omar Norman-Lott returning to the lineup will make some type of pop there. I don't know how much. We did not see an especially explosive Omar Norman-Lott in the preseason. And here we are in week 1 without 2 of the Chiefs rookies that they were going to be counting on, Omar Norman-Lott and Jalen Royals. Hopefully the Jalen Royals injury is not as long lasting as I fear the Xavier Worthy injury will be. But the transition to a Hollywood Brown focused passing game is somewhat fortunate in that the Kansas City Chiefs lost Xavier Worthy and they had a backup Xavier Worthy. That is one of the things that is a redundancy for this offense that paid off, even if I would like to see Patrick Mahomes with one of these great big 6'4", 230-pound wide receivers. With the exception of one play, Travis Kelce was not really in this game. So if you're going to have a possession-based offense moving forward on any level, I think the Chiefs are going to have to invest in one of those types of wide receivers. Macca says the defense was bad. The offense was bad. The special teams wasn't great. Other than that, everything was fantastic. Yeah, we were fantastic, I think. We are here at 10:30 on a Friday night, still communicating with each other about the Kansas City Chiefs opening weekend loss. So we were fantastic. So the thing was, though, I don't think anything was particularly bad. Can the Chargers go off and score 27 points on everybody? Yeah, they can. They have that type of offense. They have that type of coaching. So you can't really say that the defense had a terrible game. Did the offense score as many points as you wanted? No. But they were down 3 of their top 4 wide receivers. They lost one of those wide receivers in this game, so they did not have the opportunity to game plan for that wide receiver being out, and that makes things difficult. The offense was explosive. The offense was able to move the chains. The offense did put some things together. So they weren't terrible. The special teams, I thought, was pretty great with the exception of a missed special extra point, which did not look. Now I was just watching the YouTube broadcast, so probably I saw everything the same way that you did. I didn't know. That didn't look bad to me. That looked like it was over the upright. If it's over the upright, that's in, right? Isn't that how they count that? If it's over the upright and you can't tell, then you count it as a field goal. If that field goal is made, everything is hunky-dory heading into that final drive if you can get a stop. The 2-point conversion play, Travis Kelce on the sideline for that, and That's inexplicable. Again, Tyre Tart getting his hand up in the way of that play is aggravating when he should not have been in the game. But I don't think anything was terrible from any aspect of this game. It was the worst part of the game to me was the defensive backs were playing so timidly. So that I think is the problem there. Young Native says trade Pacheco for what? For what? I mean, not only has Pacheco not had a particularly promising NFL career to this point, uh, been good but not great. Running backs, but running backs do not have any trade value in the NFL market. So I don't know what you would get for Pacheco. Now I know you're throwing this out there in aggravation after a loss, so there's no real need to analyze this logistically. But you're kind of stuck at running back is the point. Denny says another season without a number one or number two wide receiver. Hopefully not the season. Hopefully not the season. Hopefully it's these few games. Jalen Royals, I think, could have made a difference out there. One thing that was confusing to me, we saw Jason Brownlee, to the best of my knowledge, on a single snap. It was a snap that was rushed. I don't think they got the look on that play they were hoping for. I don't think they got the throw or the time on that play that they were hoping for. So one snap there. I didn't see Nico Remigio out there on offense at all. So without three wide receivers, you were running a lot of two tight end sets. You were running. The interesting thing to me, and one thing to keep an eye on moving forward for these Kansas City Chiefs, you had seemingly three wide receivers you were willing to play in Juju Smith-Schuster, Tyquan Thornton, and Hollywood Brown. Three wide receivers you were willing to play. We still saw empty backfields for the Kansas City Chiefs. You had a lot of running backs lined up out wide, etc., but still an empty backfield. And that becomes something which is a talking point for defensive coordinators moving forward. That's something to which they have to dedicate time. One of those running backs that seemed to be flanked out wide a whole lot was Kareem Hunt. And I don't think he is the threat out there that is Isaiah Pacheco just for the speed factor, or Brashad Smith, because Brashad Smith is going to come up with some big plays this season. So, interesting wrinkle from the Chiefs offense. I had talked about empty backfields making a return to the Chiefs offense this year. I did not really assume that a lot of that would be with a running back still on the field. So a multiple look for the Chiefs offense that probably doesn't take a whole lot of verbiage, right? Is probably just a couple of words in that play call. So it's not going to throw off a whole lot of things with timing before the snap, etc., especially if you were motioning that running back to a running back position. Evan says Kelsey spent too much time being a celebrity in the offseason to prepare. One good play and otherwise a complete nobody. That did seem to be a problem. I don't know about the spending the time in the offseason. We don't know how he prepared before this. One thing that I think we all have to be thankful for is Taylor Swift, because in this game, if you had Travis Kelce just running buck wild in Brazil, he probably would not have even had that one play, right? So Taylor Swift probably making sure he is in his hotel room as opposed to the Brazil party scene probably helped him get that one play. So we do have to think of Travis Kelce, think of pre-Swift Kelce in Brazil. That could have been an absolute nightmare. As I lose 3 viewers because of mentioning Taylor Swift probably. Need better pass rush. Herbert had all day. He did have all day several times. He did not have, Ronald says, he did not have all day in the same way that he would have had all day last season. You saw the Kansas City Chiefs get home on a couple of sacks, Drew Tranquill coming through there, but it was not as egregious as in previous seasons. It was not as egregious as it was last year, with quarterbacks being able to just have a picnic in the backfield. So that will, I think, improve as the season goes on. That will, I think, improve if Omar Norman Lott returns to the lineup and he is not Omar Norman a lot that we saw in the preseason. Young Native says why Spags kept blitzing. Evan says he didn't blitz. So there were blitzes in this game, but it was not to the extent that I think is egregious. I think that the blitzes were noticeable because they came at noticeable times. I think that the Chiefs could afford to blitz more on first down. That is, I think, especially if quarterbacks are going to be given the opportunity to throw on first down the way that Justin Herbert was tonight. Ronald says need better pass rush. Herbert had all day. Earth Angel says the whole team needs to work on better communication and penalties. They will be fine if it's their first game and have some injuries. Plus, they can't keep bullying, tired of being bullied. Not only that, again, this is an off-schedule game. It's a Friday game. It's the first game of the year, so the Friday part's not necessarily the biggest deal. But you're out of the hemisphere. You're not out of the state. You're not out of the country. You're out of the hemisphere. So I'm tired. I'm so tired of those types of games. Give the Chiefs noon kickoffs on Sundays, and everyone will be happy. But that is not what they want to do with Patrick Mahomes. Nate says, so was the O-line's performance a problem? Because I felt it was more of a receiver problem. Yeah, that was more of a receiver problem. If Hollywood Brown had not started this game wearing Sky Moore's gloves, I think that the end of this game looks very different, right? That is the snowball that is an NFL game. That is the snowball that is football in general. We saw this a little bit with, if you watched the Texas-Ohio State game, Texas was just the victim of the snowball rolling slowly downhill. Those teams are not that different. And I think that is what happened in this game as well. The Chiefs were the victim of the slow roll snowball downhill. Denny says, Tanyan play, I missed him. I think he was just out there in blocking situations. I saw him on at least, I believe, 2 different snaps, and he was not running 40 yards downfield. So I believe that's what happened with Robert Tanyan in this game. KCDC says, one play doesn't make or break the game, but Stone Cold did break contain on the last Herbert first down. Will he own it? Will he own it is an interesting question. I believe so. I think Chris Jones has been pretty good owning things publicly in the past. I think that the big thing here is what happens with a player like Chris Jones, what happens with a player like Travis Kelce, is that they are supreme talents and they are motivated by emotion. And oftentimes, in the wake of something like that, you see them perform in an extreme fashion moving forward. You see them use that negative emotion as energy moving forward. The thing I worry about with both of those players is their age. So I think that it's a lot harder to use something like that negative emotion as a fuel if your body simply does not respond any longer. This is, I think, part of the reason psychologically that quarterbacks are lasting longer is that quarterbacks have to have a cold reserve of emotion versus the fiery emotion that the other skill position players have. So you saw the same thing from Tyre Tart in this game. He gave up basically 6 points by punching Travis Kelce in the face, or at least the opportunity, a further opportunity, an easier opportunity for those 6 points by punching Travis Kelce in the face. And then he comes out and plays better. I've never seen Tyre Tart be a game changer the way that he was for the defense in this game, in the second half of this game. So I think that what the problem here is the steely reserve of other players is not there for Chris Jones, is not there for Travis Kelce. They have to be fiery. I know that this is woo talk here, but we are in the late hours after a game. So grant me a bit of woo, if you will. Slim says, "Hey Slim, how you doing? I hated that game, even though Pat balled out despite the circumstances." Yeah, that was a painful game. Again, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it was the exact same amount of downtime that happens in a noon kickoff game, but it just felt like the Super Bowl where there were egregious commercial breaks, egregious pauses in play, all of these sorts of things. It was a very aggravating game. And if it was aggravating for us, imagine being stuck on the sideline while you're down 8 points because there's another 4 commercials for Tron that have to play. By the way, no one's going to see that movie, by the way. I don't know why you would advertise that. Don't waste your money, Disney. But you're going to waste your money, Disney, because you're Disney. And that is what Disney does in the new age. So where are we here? We got to start calling Hollywood Marquise. I agree with C. Dot. He got to earn Hollywood back. Well, he had 99 yards in this game, I believe. Not a terrible game after the first 15 minutes, but not a great game before those first 15 minutes, right? He was donning the 24 jersey. I don't know whose idea it was to grant someone else that 24 jersey, but I still have a little bit of pucker factor when I see 24 running around on the field. So get rid of that jersey immediately. Young Native says, do you think there was a holding on the Chargers' last touchdown play? Probably. Probably. When we started the game, it looked like it was just going to be a flag day for the Kansas City Chiefs. Jawan Taylor wanted to keep that proud tradition alive, and the referees seemed all the more thankful for Jawan Taylor, but I don't know. Probably. It looked like there was holding a lot on the Chargers. It wasn't really called. I think there's holding a lot on a lot of plays in the NFL. It's hard to so on this end of things, I try to always grant benefit of the doubt because otherwise if my Chiefs fan brain were really kicking into high gear, I would just complain about holding all the time, right? So I try not to really comment on that too much. Trooper Daddy says King Sua was a bleeding hole on that line. I didn't see that. I really didn't see that. So you're not going to be a stone wall as an offensive lineman in the NFL. So I thought that there was one bad play from Kingsley. I talked about that a little bit earlier, but I thought that outside of that one bad play, I thought things were decent for the Kansas City Chiefs from Kingsley Suamataia. And again, this is his first full game at left guard for the Chiefs against a very good defense. Now, there's no moral victories and there's no attaboys coming from the Philadelphia Eagles. So I also don't think that the Eagles looked as good in week one as they looked last season. So I think that we are not going into an unwinnable game versus the Eagles. This is going to be a game that will be winnable for the Kansas City Chiefs. This is going to be a game that will be winnable for the Kansas City Chiefs that took the field in week one, right? They're not going to have to get markedly better across the board if they hope to stand any chance against the Eagles. I think that they will be in that game. But again, this could be a very long early season for Chiefs fans. It could not, but it could. So an 0-1 start is certainly not where it is that you want to start, but it is what it is. Where are we at here? I apologize. Scott says, I've had enough of Taylor. Those penalties are killing us, among other things. Yeah. I don't think Andy's going to bench him for whistle or for snap to whistle or for whistle to whistle. problems. If he's going to be benched, it will be for snap to whistle problems because you know what you have snap to whistle from Jawan Taylor, and it's a pretty good offensive tackle. The other stuff, yeah, 4 penalties. You're pacing for a 60-ish penalty season, Jawan Taylor. You're pushing for that already after week 1. Mr. 100B says other teams can get home with 4. We have to blitz 6 just to have a chance. Yeah, I think that this was not a standout performance from Chris Jones. Chris Jones is who you were leaning on to get that 4-man pressure. I think that Ashton Gelati will earn more snaps as the season goes on. George Karlaftis has never been the immediate win guy. He has been the let the quarterback take that 5th step and probably have to move off of his pedestal. But the immediate wins are going to be seemingly a struggle for the Kansas City Chiefs this season. Evan says, if Andy keeps this coaching staff intact through the deadline, we will be 1-7 or worse. This staff eats their excrement for breakfast. You eat excrement for breakfast? I don't think that's the case. I don't think they're going to be 1-7. It's the NFL. Who knows? I don't think this was an egregiously bad game. Here's maybe part of what happened in this game. The Kansas City Chiefs seemed to take the field as if this were last season, seemed to take the field as if they were going to have to be in a 1-possession game, seemed to take the field as if there were no particular rush to get started. All of these 1-possession wins that we saw from the Chiefs last season may have sent them into a short-term psychosis as far as being able to jump the gun. Right? They do have the firepower. They do have the offensive line this season, seemingly, to take a few shots. And they do have the ability to get off to a faster start than they did last year. So I think that the game, and you look, you just don't know, right? Xavier Worthy went out on the 3rd play from scrimmage. Maybe that is what sent them into that shell shock that they had last year, and they just reverted to the last year's game plan because it seemed the entire time they weren't trying to really get ahead. They weren't trying to really pop, both on offense and defense. You didn't see a whole lot of free blitzers on Justin Herbert. You didn't see a whole lot of aggressive play calls on offense. And it seemed as if they were playing for that final possession, the way that they did all year last year. They just didn't get the stop at the end of the game. If they got that stop at the end of the game, Stone Cold ends up with not allowing Herbert to break contain. Herbert has to get rid of the ball. It's an incompletion. Maybe the Chiefs go down and send this thing into overtime, right? We'll never know, but those were the things that went well for them. Those were the things that went right for them last season that did not go right for them in this game. Evan says Nagy is the worst coordinator in human history. That might be true. Evan says the refs didn't lose the game. Our terrible coaching staff lost the game. I'm not as down on the coaching staff. The coaching staff went all last season. The same coaching staff went all last season having to win 1-possession ball games, and they did it. They did it. It was just this one got away from them. This isn't the worst loss in the world. This is a loss to a divisional foe. This is a loss to a team that is picked by many people to win the division. These losses happen. I think that we have to stop short of making the most radical judgments based on this game. Mafio says throwing to Brownlee in the most important play of the game was perplexing. A little bit. Perplexing, not disastrous. Because if that throw gets to have time, if that play gets to develop, if Mahomes isn't throwing to a spot there, because it was pretty clear to me without a second watch, obviously, that Mahomes was just reacting. Got to get this ball to that spot. And Jason Brownlee wasn't there. If Mahomes has the time to be able to get the ball to Brownlee, that play looks very different. So I think that's what's going on there. Again, this is Jason Brownlee, a guy new to the team, a guy who has not had a whole lot of snaps in the NFL, which adds to the perplexity of the situation, but it does not add, but it subtracts from the questionable outcome of the play, because with a little bit of time for synchronicity between those two players, this probably is a much different play. This might be a much different post game, all of those things. Evans says Eagles only won because CD has glass hands. Yeah, the Eagles almost, and KCDC says the Eagles almost got beat last night. The Eagles and the Chiefs almost started the season 0-1. That would have been an incredible turn of events. Just a wild thing to see happen, especially because both of those teams were so solid, the Chiefs and the Eagles, last year, and that's how they ended up in the Super Bowl. Neither of those teams really, right, were beneficiary. So if it were the Commanders, right, you could say that was a team that got hot and they start 0-1, it's not all that surprising. But if it had been these two teams, I think that it would have been very surprising. Trooper Daddy says Zone D is scary these days when we lack a pass rush. Yeah. And I think that will improve. And I think that as Ashton Gelati earns more snaps for this defense, that will improve. I think that as if Chris Jones is playing more of a traditional defensive tackle position for this team, that improves, because the zone defense is much more intimidating if you have a guy barreling down the center of the offensive line. And Chris Jones, 6'6", 34-inch arms, that is a lot of reach to get into a passing lane. When he's outside on the edge, it's not all that hard to get a pass off in the middle of the field. The middle of the field is what is particularly vulnerable in a zone defense, because that's where the holes in the zone develop. So that is, I think, part of that conundrum. You have the most talented defensive tackle in the NFL. You have one of the most talented defensive linemen in the NFL. You want to offer him that versatility. But I think that when you take him away from that defensive tackle spot, especially with the zone defense behind him, things get a little bit out of whack. Things get a little bit wonky. KCDC says, keep the faith alive. We got this. Yeah, look, like I've been saying all off season, the Chiefs could be a better team and have a worse record. 15-2 is the result of a good team and some good fortune. The Chiefs did not have. Can you think of a single break that went their way in this game? Top of my head, I cannot. So without a single break going your way, I mean, the long plays, those were all executed. None of those were a hole in the defense. Even the Kelsey one that looked like, oh, he got away. No, that was a great play design that was miraculously executed by Travis Kelsey. That is what happened there. If you were looking at the fortune of the evening, I think that went against the Kansas City Chiefs. You have a non-ejection on Tyre Tart. That went against the Kansas City Chiefs. You have a freak play injury for Xavier Worthy. That went against the Kansas City Chiefs. You had Jawan Taylor go against the Kansas City Chiefs. There were a number of things that were just bad breaks for the Kansas City Chiefs that weren't egregious, but were there, were present. I bet if you went back and watched this game again, you could think so. Drew Tranquill missed some plays. Jalen Watson, I think, missed some plays. I think that he was out. Was he out that next defensive series after the injury in the end zone? And there were some plays made by the Chargers that were good plays. They were well executed, but I think that under different circumstances, yeah, maybe those don't go quite that direction. So I don't think there's anything to be particularly down on from this game. Slim is chillin' says, I wish we could have ran the ball more with Kareem and Pacheco. Pat led both teams in rushing yards, which is very clutch, but I'd rather have us have the ability to run with the running backs. Yeah, that's another thing here. So I think that part of the reason we didn't see more Pacheco, part of the reason we didn't see more Kareem Hunt is that the Kansas City Chiefs were down from the get-go, right after that first series. You could have run more in the first series, but after that, the Kansas City Chiefs are kind of in pin your ears back mode. And one thing that we did see, like Slim says, is we saw Patrick Mahomes lead both teams in rushing. That's troubling. That's troubling because Patrick Mahomes does not want to run during the season. Patrick Mahomes wants to save his legs for the postseason. Not only that, Patrick Mahomes is in YOLO mode apparently and throwing shoulders into people, which is troubling. But Patrick Mahomes always has that ability. You don't want to see him use it this early in the season. But had the Chiefs won this game, that sets them up 1-0 in the division. That sets them up 1-0 on the schedule. They have a good start to the year without three of their wide receivers, without three of their top four wide receivers. I mean, it's not like it was Jason Brownlee and Nico Remigio that went down. These are three of their top four wide receivers with whom they are without. So Mahomes running this early in the year is gives a little bit of pause, I think. KCDC says, we have an out after this year on Taylor's 4-year, $80 million contract, and I fully believe that they will use that. They will utilize that. I say that now. If Jawan Taylor goes 4 games without being penalized, not going to happen. But if he did, he is a good enough offensive tackle from snap to whistle that I think you have to roll with him if you don't have a sure thing after. Now, we're going to see a very boring draft, I think, from the Kansas City Chiefs. Probably it will be one running back somewhere, because I think Isaiah Pacheco is likely gone after the season. Probably it will be one wide receiver somewhere, and I think you're going to have offensive linemen and defensive linemen. Probably a defensive back because of Brett Veach, etc. But after that, I just don't know how you move forward. I don't know how you move forward with Jawan Taylor if you have any type of option after him on the depth chart. Yeah. Evan says Chris Jones is over 30 and he looks like just a guy. I would not go that far yet, right? So I think that one of the things that we get caught up in as fans, because all we have is in the NFL especially, is the one game to go on in an entire week, is the one game performance. If Chris Jones has this performance for the first 6 weeks of the season, yeah, he's just a guy. But we are just as likely to see Chris Jones come out, and he's proven this in the past, and have 2 sacks next week, right? So maybe. I will grant you a maybe on that, Evan. KCDC says, keep up the content, bro. Keep up the great work. Love the content, bro. Keep up the great work. I appreciate that. If you are here, it helps me out a lot if you hit the like button. It lets other people know about this channel. I am still one of the little guys, so I appreciate all of your involvement here. Slim says, Chris Jones doesn't look like a jag, just a guy. Looks like our best defensive lineman still, and that's a problem. Yeah, so those two things might not be mutually exclusive, Slim. The being just a guy and being the Chiefs' best defensive lineman might be the same thing. They might be. Very hard when you're picking 30, 31, 32 every year to get these impact defensive linemen. The defensive tackles go very early. The defensive ends go very early. And I think that what you're seeing is a culmination of that. Quentin Johnston for the Chargers was a draft bust. Quentin Johnston for the Chargers was a draft bust who still has enough talent to be a jag, to be just a guy. The Chiefs do not get a whole lot of swings at players whose talent level puts their bust ability at contributor. And that is what you're seeing here. It is his third season, right? Quentin Johnston. What you're seeing in his third year is he seems to be perhaps assuming the role of contributor. By the time the Chiefs draft, most of those contributors, the guy whose floor is contributor, are gone. And that adds up. That adds up for a team. Young Native says, Eagles defense ain't the same. I hope Big Red adds more wide receivers. Adds more wide receivers where? If you're saying this season, I don't know where that comes. I don't know where the Chiefs, I don't know what the Chiefs would trade outside of draft capital. I think that Brett Veach has to be hesitant to trade future draft capital at this point because you're going to need picks. You have so many high tag guys on this roster, and you're trying to re-sign Trent McDuffie, who was the Chiefs' best defensive player in this game. So I don't think you can trade picks and acquire salary. So if that is what you're saying, then I don't think that can happen in the draft. Yeah, but the Chiefs have a lot of guys. The Chiefs are down 3 of their top 4 wide receivers and still had an explosive enough passing game. Not a great passing game, right? Patrick Mahomes can go off for 350 at the drop of a pin. He was not able to do that. A lot of that was that first quarter. Slim says we need more pass rushers to make an impact. Absolutely true. Millennium Carrier says, other than McDuffie, our corners look pathetically lost. Yeah, just timid, waiting for a guy to make a catch and then waiting for him to make a move upfield. And then we do have to talk about tackling on this team. Atrocious in this game. Part of that is the fact that you are not wanting to have too much contact in the preseason because you know you have a Super Bowl caliber team. Part of that is the new NFL. Part of that is the new NFL rules for practice. Part of that is the early season. When all of those things come together and add up to an absolutely atrocious tackling performance, then it becomes a problem. And it will get better as the season goes on, but not good to see. Not great to see. Slim says, Simmons did good besides a false start. I was worried about him going against Mack, but they mostly lined Mack up across from Taylor. Yeah, so it looked like I talked in the pregame videos about Harbaugh. I can never get the John and Jim straight. Plus they look the exact same, so I don't take blame for that. Harbaugh was going to test Simmons with Mack. It looks like the decision was just straight up made. Nope, Jawan Taylor is their weakest offensive lineman. Let's go there. So that is crazy to see in week 1. A hermit says, I thought to myself, wow, no flags on Taylor yet. I almost said it out loud. Then I said, I'm not saying it out loud, not going to jinx it. Apparently that was enough because he got one on the next play. It is your fault, hermit. It's your fault. Trooper Daddy says, love Butker, but missing that PAT hurt. Still love him, though. Pardon me. Just frustrated and spoiled for the last 6 years. Again, guys, I didn't see that miss. I think that is another call that went against the Chiefs there. I thought that if it is above the goalpost, it's good. But look, I'm not an NFL referee. Perhaps I'm wrong. Trooper Daddy says, wide receiver 1 and X outmade us look anemic. Royals gave me hope, but he was out. We played with a serious handicap due to our wide receiver situation. Nero Dragon says, how long is Xavier out? And Young Native says, Juju wide receiver 1 and Brown wide receiver 2 now till Rice suspension. Does anyone have do you have confirmation on that, Young, that Xavier is out an extended period of time? I had not heard that part of things yet. I jumped straight on the stream after the game, so I don't have any of the any of the news on that. If anyone does, let me know. But I would assume again that this is going to be a 3 to 6 week thing. It looks like it's probably a shoulder injury, maybe dislocation, something like that. He took a pretty hard hit from Kelsey there. Um, they can still win. They can absolutely still win, even without Xavier, even without Rice, even without Royals. Hopefully, Royals is back next week. It was not a definitive he's going to be out until Wednesday, right? So I don't know. I don't know with the wide receivers. I don't know. With Travis Kelce having an otherwise pedestrian game outside of one big play, I don't know. The tight end position for the Chiefs, Noah Gray. Did Noah Gray have a reception in this game? It's going to be, they're going to have to do a whole lot more work. Noah Gray, 1 reception, 3 yards. So 1 reception, 1 target, 3 yards. So that is what that is. And if you're missing 1, if you're missing 2, this can still be an extremely explosive offense. Missing 3 is tough. So I just don't know. I don't know. Burrito says, dude, I'd love to see you and Cole from HBTC have a collab video talking about the game and the team this week. I love Cole. I have a very difficult schedule. That is the problem from this end. I have a very difficult schedule. I'm not really on social media, so that would be cool. I do not have the personality that Cole has, so I am not as high energy as Cole. So I think that I might weigh him down in a lot of aspects. But yet, so Cole's been absolutely amazing to me the entire time that he's had his channel, and I do think Cole got me over the hump on this channel with a shout out. I believe it was on the Leo Chanel draft pick video. So I appreciate everything that Cole does for the community. Great to see him doing so well. Macca says, 1 silver lining, Thornton looked like he understands Mahomes. There is a connection there. Again, all he has to, 1 reception, 38 yards, I think it was exactly. All he has to have is that. All he has to have is that 1 reception, 38 yards. If he has 1 reception for 38 yards, 17 times 38, you're looking at a 646-yard season. And that is way better than what Marquez Valdez-Scantling was bringing to the table. And MVS was the number 2 wide receiver. Trooper Daddy says $15 million for a tackle to ride the bench, give him a shot at right tackle. I'm not all that mad at the Jalen Moore signing, even if he is on the bench. I think that when the Chiefs have had as pronounced a problem as they have had on the offensive line the past couple of seasons, as they have had on the offensive line in the past, I don't think you can penalize and overkill at the position, at the tackle position. That said, would he be better than Jawan Taylor? I think so. So the sort of the conundrum there, do you want $15 million riding the bench with Jalen Moore or $20 million riding the bench with Jawan Taylor? I say take your chance with $20 million on the bench. But I don't know. I still think we're going to be in for a few more weeks of Jawan Taylor at that right tackle position, whether there are flags on the field or not. Trooper Daddy says, when it's all said and done, we lost 1 game. Could have stopped the 3rd and 14 to get a chance. It happens. We will be okay. Yeah, that's the thing. It's 0-1. It's not 0-8. It is not 1-3. The Chiefs, I think we're counting on this win. The Chiefs, I think, were absolutely hoping this would be a win. The Chiefs, I think, were planning for this to be a win. But this is not the most egregious loss in the world. If the Chiefs start 2-2, they're in good position with the schedule. If the Chiefs start 2-2, they're in good position with what it is that the NFL has asked them to do with this front-loaded schedule, the way it is. If the Chiefs start 2-2, they're in good position with Rashee Rice coming back eventually, with hopefully the return of Xavier Worthy this season. Hopefully that shoulder does not nag on him the entire year. The Chiefs are in good position with Jalen Royals, hopefully returning to the lineup. The Chiefs are in good position with Omar Norman Lott, hopefully being a contributor. Now, it's rare that you get more healthy after week one, but that goes for all 32 teams in the NFL, not just the Kansas City Chiefs. Nero says, despite everything, this was a winnable game. It was. This was a winnable game, and I don't imagine there will be many non-winnable games this season for the Kansas City Chiefs. Pardon me. I'm going to try not to gulp in your ears here. I think that the Kansas City Chiefs that we saw tonight can be in every game on their schedule. Slim says there hasn't been an update on how long Worthy will be out. Andy says he'll get an MRI tomorrow. So, yeah, that's the fact that he's getting an MRI is worrisome, right? That means that there's probably at least a threat of something structural. Probably these guys go through MRIs all the time, and I am just overreacting. But I don't like to hear that. Will Fancyson says playing Jawan Taylor is sunk cost fallacy. We're paying him regardless. I say give the new backup left tackle a shot. Name slipping my mind, Jalen Moore. So if we're talking Madden, you're 1,000% right. If we're talking strictly finances, you're 1,000% right. If we're talking hypotheticals and game theory, you're 1,000% right. The problem there is if Jalen Moore is the same as Jawan Taylor, it's a push. If Jalen Moore is better than Jawan Taylor, you come out ahead. If Jalen Moore is worse than Jawan Taylor, or Jawan Taylor or Jalen Moore gets injured while he's on the field, all of a sudden you're putting back into the game a player who has been benched. And for some guys, that's a motivating factor. For some guys, that is not. So I think the moment you add in the human condition to this equation, it becomes a much more difficult trigger to pull. We saw that with Kingsley apparently last year. Once he was taken off the field, he was never put back on. He never went back on the field after week 18, right? But it was done. It was donezo for Kingsley. It seemed that damaged him psychologically. So 99% of areas in life I think you're right. When you're adding in psychology to things, I think it gets a little more sticky. TSM says two things. It's Burrow's time, and now he's one step closer. Maybe, TSM. We don't know how that will play out, obviously. We don't know that the Chiefs will be on a downward spiral this season, obviously. The Bengals are in an especially precarious position here. Offensive line doesn't look great. Defense might still be absolutely terrible. You deal with that 2 seasons in a row, the wheels can fall off very fast. If I did one of these NFL total commentary type shows, one of the things that I would have said for this season is the Bengals could go to the Super Bowl. The Bengals could go 3-14. I think that they are in that position. I really do. I don't care that they have all of the talent in the world between Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase. That can go to bunk if the rest of the team gives up. And it might be one of those situations. It might be one of those scenarios. I think that the top is spinning for the Cincinnati Bengals. And if it hits a crevice in the table, it's going wild. They're not going to die slow. They're going to absolutely combust. Could be in the Super Bowl, could be 3-14. This is going to be a wild season, in my opinion, for the Cincinnati Bengals. Nate says, okay, find a safety, please. I'm tired of watching these subpar DBs give up big catches. The catches are going to happen. It's just the NFL. It's just the NFL in 2025. The catches are going to happen. What doesn't have to happen is that the safeties do not have to watch a player catch the football and then say, okay, come to daddy. That doesn't have to happen on the field. You can be aggressive. You can hit players. You can make a tackle. You can wrap up. That, I think, is the aggravating point for me with this safety group. Burrito says, do you think keeping Reed on the team over signing either Karlaftis or Smith this year would have been smart? I don't. Justin Reed, I think, is Justin Reed is a good NFL player. George Karlaftis is closer to the ball. Justin Reed and George Karlaftis might be comparable. So if you were to, for example, assign them Madden ratings, they might be the same rating. Karlaftis is closer to the ball, and the defensive end position is a higher positional value than safety. So in that situation, you keep the guy who's closer to the ball. You keep the guy who is at the higher positional value. I think that's what goes into a decision like that. Young says, will Mike Edwards be back in anytime soon? I hope not. I hope not. Brian Cook was cooked. Mike Edwards looks like the S on the end of his last name is for plural because he was that slow. It looked like there were two Mike Edwards out there climbing on top of one another trying to make the tackle. So what it is with speed at the safety position, I don't know. Trooper Daddy says Tranquil balled out and had words with the D, especially Chris Jones. This is the motivation we needed. Hopefully, Drew Tranquil, after having a down season last year, did bounce back in this game, did have high impact plays in this game. I feel like he gave up a pretty big reception though. There was I believe a mesh route that he was just like 9 yards off the ball and watched get completed in front of him at some early in the game. Not the biggest sin in the world, but absolutely a better start to the season this year for your friend Drew Tranquil than last year. Gofus says there are no positives for this game. No positives? You don't like watching Patrick Mahomes complete 30-yard passes? You don't like seeing the Kansas City Chiefs have a left tackle that is quality and starting? You don't like seeing Kingsley Suamataia reclaim his NFL career? Gave up one big play, I thought, but still, you didn't like seeing Drew Tranquil sack the quarterback? You didn't like seeing a 3 wide receiver short, wide receiver core still author explosive plays? I think that there are certainly positives to be had here. Was it great? No, but I think that there are some positives for this game. Gofus says Spags playing zone defense and our DBs given 8-yard cushions. Yeah, no, that's terrible. I agree with you. I 100% agree with you there. Young Native says Herbert got rocked by Drew. I was afraid he was going to draw a penalty on. I think it was like a 3-yard sack that he had, 3-4 yard sack. I thought that he was going to draw a penalty because they put skirts on quarterbacks these days, but it ended up not. So is what it is. Burrito says, I was glad to see Hollywood get off the field healthy. Yeah, that's the one. That's a positive. Hollywood Brown played football. Hollywood Brown did not limp off the field. Now we might find out on Monday that he has some calf strain or something that's going to sideline him for a game because he was healthy. It seems like that is the snowball that compounds on a player like that. His health becomes a detriment to his health. He was out there running around and gets a cramp. Trooper Daddy says, we just need to find our groove, get all our injured players back, stay healthy, and it will be our time again. This team is too good on paper and too much experience. Too good on paper, I think, is an arguable phrase for this team. Too good on paper at several positions. Too good on paper at the most important position. But I think years of drafting so low, again, has riddled the Chiefs roster with guys for whom the floor is not contributor. That is the one thing that I would have pinned to your message there, Trooper Daddy, that it could be too good on paper if some of the players who deserve opportunities get opportunities and their name on paper holds more weight. Guys, I think that is just about where we'll wrap up. I'll take a few more, but Burrito says, I appreciate you doing this after game Q&A. Kind of eases my mind after the frustration of the loss. Have a good night, man. Yeah, good night to you too, Burrito. Very frustrating loss, but not the worst loss in the world, not the most frustrating loss in the world, not a whole lot of things to be too terribly mad about. Trooper Daddy says, would you be the one that is in favor of trading up each year? No. I'm not a real big trade up guy, but if there is a player there that is identifiable and the price tag is not too great, but even at this point, even if the price tag is too great, because teams don't like trading with the Chiefs, if you find a guy that you know is going to contribute, I think you have to make the move. Young Native says, great live, helped a lot, helped Omar Norman a lot. Thank you for being here. Nate says, can you talk about Simmons' performance? So without going back, right, obviously, I jumped on immediately after the game ended. I didn't notice anything. I mean, there was the one holding penalty, right? Was it holding or was it false start? I can't remember. I didn't notice any egregious plays. I didn't notice any straight up, flat out, pillar to post losses. I don't think that you could ask more from a rookie tackle who didn't play half of his last season in college than what you got from Josh Simmons in this performance. Josh Simmons in this game allowed the time. Josh Simmons in this game playing side by side with a guy that many had written off, playing side by side with a guy who needed to reclaim his career, playing side by side with a guy who is starting his first extended NFL action at guard against live fire, right? I thought that he did a good job and the type of job that will allow the Kansas City Chiefs to have a good season. I don't know how he will grade out in this game. I don't care how he will grade out in this game. The Chiefs were in position to win the whole night. There was not anything that was, they were never out of it. So it was competitive what would you say? There were probably 55 snaps in this game. Competitive every snap. Every snap meant something. Every snap mattered. And Patrick Mahomes had, Patrick Mahomes threw the ball. If I can get this to work. Patrick Mahomes threw the ball 40 times, 39 times. So 0 egregious losses on 39 dropbacks for Josh Simmons is, I think, absolutely what you would hope to see. Patrick Mahomes with a further 6 runs, so probably you're looking at 45 dropbacks, right? I mean, I don't think any of those were designated runs for Mahomes, not to the best of my recollection. Pardon me. So I think that is absolutely the best starting point that you could have for him. Whether or not he was all that effective in the running game, I do not know. I was not as attuned to the running game. Pardon me, I apologize. But I think that is absolutely what you would want from Josh Simmons. Maybe the best praise that could be maybe the best praise that could be dolloped onto Josh Simmons is that you don't really remember his performance. After last season, where there was nary a game that Chiefs fans could not remember the left tackle's performance, that might be good enough starting spot that, hey, we'll take it all the time. We'll take it every time. I certainly would take that performance 18 times this season. Um, Nero says, game one, it's cool, shake it off, and going to win the big one. There is still the hope that the Chiefs are a Super Bowl team. Their 0-1 start didn't stop them when they lost to the Lions from getting to the Super Bowl. Maybe this will be a good luck. Maybe this will portend good luck moving forward for the Kansas City Chiefs. I think that is where I will call it, guys. Thank you all for being here. I appreciate you. I will be back tomorrow with at least one video. I think moving forward, I think what I'm going to be doing, and if you're still here, let me know how you feel about this. Doing a game review film or a game review video, not film. You toss up NFL film on YouTube, you're gonna run into problems. But a game review video on the day following the game, and a offensive what we learned and defensive what we learned videos the day after that. So it just depends on how the schedule. So if you are still here, let me know what kind of videos you would want to see. It looks like there's 43 of us still here. As opposed to doing Q&A that way, let me take some time to try to be a better creator. Is there any type of video that people want to see more of as we sort of get into the roller coaster of the season, with the high points articulated by games and the low points articulated by, from a creator's perspective, there's always the question of, when do I stop making content about the previous game and switch over to the next game? Early in my YouTube tenure, this really got me in trouble, because I was speaking about the previous game all the way up until the day before the next game. And it seems that that type of analysis is kind of done a day or two after the game. Is there any type of comments there from that perspective? Anybody want to let me know on that? Nobody? Everybody's quiet? Okay. I am not sure exactly how I will handle that then. If you have any thoughts after this video is live, let me know in the comments. I will probably just continue doing as I have done. But thank you for being here, and I hope to have you back for the next one.